Hey YouTube, warbles on a lot here. It is my sad and melancholy duty to bring you a movie about the limitations on SunFoils. Last night I had tea with my son, my auto electrician son, who was freshly back from a in-service course, 2-day course run by Bosch in Brisbane. And when I sent him off to Brisbane, I sent him with the question, can you ask the boffins from Bosch in Brisbane, representatives of the vast Euro-Peon auto-electrical manufacturing company, how can we fit a SunFoil to a vehicle that's got a modern Smartcharge alternator which is controlled by the car's engine management computer? Because my understanding is that modern cars, the computer measures how much current comes out of the battery, and then the computer profiles a charge to replace exactly the amount of current that needs to go back into the battery. And it occurred to me that while the car's switched off in the car park and the SunFoil fills the battery up, if the computer's not aware of this, then the computer is going to blow the battery up. So that was the question I sent my son off to the boffins at Bosch. And he came back and he said, look, Dad, just forget about it. He said, there's no possible way that you can integrate a SunFoil onto one of those modern cars. He said, the way they've got things set at the moment, they like their battery to be between 20 and 40% discharged at any one time, so that when you put your foot on the brake, they can increase the current to the field coil in the alternator and use it for regenerative braking. And I said, yeah, well, every car in the existing global fleet already does that because its battery's permanently flat, part flat, so any time you take your foot off the throttle, the battery's load on the alternator is fed to the crankshaft via the drive belt, and I've pretty much proved that with a speed check that I used to do. I'd arrive at the northern outskirts of Glen Innes doing 100 kilometres an hour. I'd get to a sign that says, please limit your exhaust braking. That sign was about 100 metres on the north side of the 80 kilometres per hour speed limit. I'd pull my foot off the accelerator as I crossed the exhaust brake sign, and the car would always be doing exactly 80 kilometres an hour as I got to the 80 kilometre per hour speed limit sign. And when my kids were little, that was kind of like Daddy's demonstration of precision driving, you know, because he had fighter pilot fantasies when he was young. Once I put a Mark III SunFoil on my car, I get to exactly the same point on the road at exactly the same speed, 100 kilometres an hour. I pop the throttle, and instead of being doing 80 kilometres an hour 100 metres down the road, I now go 300 metres down the road before the car is slowed down to 80 kilometres, because it's got rolling resistance plus aerodynamic drag, and there's no alternator drag feeding itself back into the crankshaft. So the existing fleet was already doing regenerative braking via the electrical system. Congratulations, fella, you've just reinvented the wheel and got a computer on it. And that's not an unalloyed benefit, having a computer on it, because as my son says, these modern cars have really huge electrical systems. And because they didn't decide to ever equip them with a solar panel, say 10, 20, 30 years ago when solar panels first became available, they've just beefed up the alternator until now they're talking about the next lot of cars are going to come out, and their alternators will be able to put out 120 amps of current at 1,200 RPM, which means the engine's going to be idling at the traffic light and you're going to be capable of thumping out 2¼ horsepower of electricity. When you're going up the highway at cruise revs, it's going to be more like 160 amps. So 3 horsepower, 3.5 horsepower. And therefore, the contention is that a solar panel with 1 or 2 or 5 amps is just not going to be able to make a meaningful contribution, which was the argument initially put on my 1.7 amp panel going on the roof of a car with a 50 amp alternator. You know, why would you want something that's only, 2% or so of your overall ability to produce electricity? And my argument has been, and it's a valid argument for a car made before 1996, if it's a Holden and sorry, 2006 if it's a Holden and 2002 if it's a Mercedes. My argument is if the battery's full, the alternator hasn't got anything to do. Therefore you're going to save fuel. If the current crop of cars are coming out with, get this, electrically heated catalytic converters, and they're being designed with a computer that requires 5 amps to keep its 3 modules awake, the electrical current demanded by the computers to stay awake to notice that the solar panel is charging the battery will be pretty much more than the solar panel can provide. To me, the idea that it's going to be more fuel efficient to design a car that permanently pumps out between 2 and 3 horsepower of electricity so that you can have a massive electrical system to run a computer to try and save a bit of fuel in the ignition timing, or more likely to run a massive electrical system so that you can have an air conditioning blower fan or a heater blower fan, as well as a stereo system and a GPS for the people in command of the front seats, and an entertainment system running TVs and headphones and computers and video games for the little people in the back seats. It sort of seems a counsel of despair to me. And I would suggest that as fuel becomes more expensive and scarcer, then the idea that it's a clever thing to have all these electrical sucking, therefore fuel sucking accessories on your car is going to be pretty much junked. But at the moment, people are still in the mindset where in order to keep the car manufacturers in business, in order to give their employees something to do, they want to keep manufacturing new cars, and that means people have to be convinced that their old car, 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, is not worth having, it's not worth operating. So people are instilled with a hunger to buy the new car, and this is what they're going to be getting fed. A car that's incapable of using a solar panel to charge a simple, efficient lead-acid battery because people want to have a lot of fancy power-sucking doodads. And that's going to be the new fashion. And the worst news is that manufacturers are only legally required to support any vehicle with spare parts for 5 years. So people like me who are getting around in a 30-year-old car, we're going to get squeezed off the road by lack of brake pads or gaskets or bearings or whatever it is that the car consumes slowly over the years. And there's an awful lot of people who want to buy cars from European manufacturers, who want to meet the European standards. So I think my daydream of having every vehicle in the world manufactured with a solar panel, retrofitted with a solar panel, it's out there in the Wibnif fantasy. The world doesn't want to do it. As a kid, there was a story that you should never try to teach anything to a monkey, because a monkey can't learn it. A more vicious way of putting it is never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig. Another example speaks of casting pearls before swine, because the pig will knock the pearls out of the way in order to get to the carrot tops. I was hoping that with SunFoils I could convince a bunch of people to adopt something that they didn't really care about, they couldn't be bothered paying attention to, but once they noticed a few smart people doing it to their cars, then everybody would follow suit because it was easy and it was applicable to any vehicle. I didn't realise that there was a bunch of lunatic electrical engineers dreaming up systems that are wildly profligate with electricity, to the point where if you covered the entire top surface of the car, it wouldn't make that much difference, because you would have to run the computer the whole bloody time to keep track of what the solar panel's doing. I personally believe that's a big loophole in their argument. I figure that if they're capable of making a computer that can run this mobile phone and a camera, they're capable of teaching their automotive computer that there's a fucking SunFoil on the roof. But they don't want to. That's the whole point of it. They don't want to. If they admit that putting a solar panel on the roof of a car will radically improve its fuel efficiency in real life, so that a 5-year-old car is not considered to be a gas-guzzling fuel hog, then that means they have no raison d'etre. They have no reason to exist building more new, modern cars when the old ones do the job more fuel efficiently than they ever used to, because now they've got a solar panel. So yeah, we've run up against the limits of the greedy consumerist lifestyle, and I've been trying to feed strawberries to the pigs, you know, and the pig doesn't give a shit whether it's eating strawberries or carrot tops, but it will eat the strawberries. Well, no. No, they won't take to the fucking SunFoils. They just don't want to. Right? SunFoils are going to become a do-it-yourself preserve of people who drive cars that are old enough to have a simple enough electrical system that they can benefit from something that makes sense. What it means is the end results of my experiment appear to be in, and that experiment shows me that it is easier to teach wild grey kangaroos to eat bread simply because it's free, it's a good idea, and it has no downsides, than it is to teach human beings to save energy on the road transport fleet by putting a solar panel on their vehicle and using sunlight to finish recharging the battery at the end of the short engine run, which is why the battery never gets topped up. If the industry chooses to plan on having their battery between 60 and 80% full, so it's going to be permanently between 20 and 40% empty, so 30% on average of their fuel is going to go to their electrical system because they just want to have TVs in the back seats because the parents don't want to talk to the children as they drive to work. That is their choice. I'm not going to curse them because I don't want to graduate from being a Wiri nun, which is a wise man, medicine man and a magician, into being a Kadaicha man, who is a prick who walks around in emu feathered boots pointing the bone at people that he thinks evil things about. But I'm very, very pissed off. You get that, don't you? It's only 4 years of my life, trying to convert the world to do something sensible. You win some, and you lose some. And one of the joyful things about life on planet Earth is that even though there's 7 billion people out there, 500 million of them don't have a cardboard box to live in, so, you know, my palatial mansion here is absolutely glorious riches by comparison. Just as there's a lot of people doing stupid shit and thinking silly ideas make sense, they are all at perfect liberty to wake up to themselves tomorrow morning. They could come to their senses. And it is not my fault if they choose not to, because I have done my level best. If they don't want to pay attention to SunFoils, it's because they don't want to. For all practical purposes, it won't make much difference to me because I live in a social black hole. That's a place where time moves more slowly and bad ideas take longer to filter in. And now that one of the biggest shakers and movers in the town's let me put a SunFoil on his car to drive to his nuclear power station shop, I'm going to have a little bit of fun seeing how many of the cars in my local shire I can convert people to put solar panels on, because it is a good idea, unless you drive a shiny new piece of shit fuel hog that you can buy from any new manufacturer with a Bosch Smartcharge Fartinator in it. Like I said, Warbles is cranky. Ciao.